But now we have someone else coming up, Lynn. This is the guy I'm looking forward. He's done a lot in helping people achieve freedom and do that. And matter of fact, I'm seeing on the little icons down here at the bottom that he is joining us right now. Tell us a little bit about this person that we see coming on right now.
Yes, I'm so happy to have Neill Franklin, who heads Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. And he has given he was 30 years, I think, in law enforcement and saw the ravages of the drug war. He's also featured in Deep Web and has just been an incredible advocate for justice, really. And I'm so happy to see him. He's a great person. Everyone loves him. And he's also been very generous with contributions in the store, and he's very smart. So, hey, Neill, good to see you.
Neill, welcome aboard.
It's great to be on. You guys look great, by the way.
Well, thank you. You look good too. Yes, indeed.
Wait till 10 o'clock.
Yeah, we're going till 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it's going to be a long day for you guys.
Organization you have and what you're doing for the cause of liberty and freedom, and your background particularly. I think it's going to be interesting to a lot of people.
Yeah, well, 30 plus years, 34 years in policing, and guys, I didn't always think this way. When I started in law enforcement with the Maryland State Police back in the late 1970s, going into the 1980s, working undercover, locking up a lot of people for selling drugs. And most of the people I locked up were just small time people. Most of them were users, using marijuana and other things, just enjoying themselves, not out to harm anyone. I didn't think the way I think now. And I think the reason for it, I was like I say, I was for locking up everybody and just throwing away the key. Because as a young 20-something-year-old going into policing, going into law enforcement, you just don't have a clue as to the broader picture. And the policing environment from the training aspects through the environment itself of working on the streets and doing the work is a very closed network. It's a very closed society, and it restricts your ability to educate yourself about these things on a much larger and global scale. Whether we're talking about incarceration, mass incarceration, unfair sentencing, mandatory minimum sentencing, whether we're talking about the broken war on drugs itself with those policies, and in a time when we need to be regulating and controlling drugs, whether it's about civil forfeiture, and just the whole long list, the militarization of our police departments today, you don't have a clue as a young cop. And we don't do a very good job in policing of teaching our police officers the impact that they have upon society at large. And, but fortunately for me, it was before I ended my policing career that I did begin to educate myself on these issues on a much broader platform. And while still working in policing, I started speaking out, regarding the war on drugs and those failed policies. Here we are trying to solve a public health crisis with criminal justice solutions.
Right.
It just doesn't work. So then I stumbled across Leap's new website back in 2003, I think it was. And so Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, I signed on, and I started speaking for them a few years later, and eventually became the executive director. And we continue to grow as an organization around the globe, trying to end the disastrous war on drugs and all of the harms that come along with that, some of which I already spoke about. And there's much more, and then here's Ross, with his situation of these ungodly the sentence of life without parole. I mean, what's with this? Here's a young man, like many others, by the way, who have been incarcerated in this country, where we incarcerate more people than any country around the globe, by far. 5% of the world's population we are in the United States, but we have 25% of the world's prisoners in the land of the free, if I might say. And so here you have Ross, someone who has so much to give to society.
Right.
And we're going to be spending, you know, for 50 years that he's incarcerated. Hopefully it's not going to get to that point anywhere close. But $2.5 million, you know, and it's not just the monetary aspect. It's what he can contribute to society on a social level, on a personal level, on a, you know, community level, if he's no longer behind these bars. And it's Ross and it's thousands upon thousands of others who are in his situation across this country.
True.
Yeah.
I've often said that this isn't just about Ross at all. He represents, because he's become the poster boy of the drug war, so many people, like you said, Neill. And I got to say, I forgot, because my brain's starting to get overloaded with all this information, is that Leap and Neill stepped up and joined the amicus brief as well. They, you know, walk the walk here. And Neill stepped up and supported the challenge to this draconian sentence. So he doesn't just talk about it. He's doing things. And we should all support Leap and tell people about it, because he knows. He's been there. He's been on both sides. So it's meaningful. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. Well, Neill, while we've got you here, I want you to tell us a little bit about LEAP. That's L-E-A-P.
Yeah.
The Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. Tell us about that, and what kind of results are you seeing in the work you're doing?
Well, so LEAP was formed in 2002. It was the brainchild of two cops, Jack Cole, who is a retired lieutenant from the New Jersey State Police, and Peter Criss, who's a retired captain from the town of Tonawanda in New York State. And they had been working on drug policy reform for a few years, and they got together and said, hey, why don't we put together an organization of law enforcement folks? And it started out with a board of 5 cops, 4 from the United States, 1 from Canada. And before you know it, as the years started clicking by, you know, this what began as a small group of law enforcement cops speaking out against the many failures of the war on drugs. Here we are, you know, with a policy that is counterproductive to public safety. And if we wanted to reduce crime, disease, death, and addiction, they quickly began educating people on the fact that you need to legalize, regulate, and control drugs. And so now, what is it, 14th year, I think it is, we have grown to 6 other branches around the globe, Canada, Brazil, we have a couple in Europe, Costa Rica, we're working on Australia, and we have tens of thousands of members. We have close to 200,000 total members and supporters, but we've also grown beyond police officers. We're judges, we're criminal prosecutors, we're prison wardens and parole and probation officials, federal agents, and more. And I think we do a really good job of speaking about this issue of the failed war on drugs from a law enforcement criminal justice perspective, you know, again, demonstrating how these policies are counterproductive to public safety. They cause more crime and violence in our communities, where gangs and, you know, violent gangs and the cartels are just going crazy in our communities. And it's, you know, again, it's counterproductive to good health policies where, you know, there's no regulation or control whatsoever over what's being sold on our street corners. And the other thing is, it's, you know, these gangs and crews on our street corners, they're recruiting our kids.
That's
you know, out of school, hanging out on street corners in this very dangerous gun-toting society. So that's what we do. And we're going to have a surprise for everybody in about another month. We're going to be broadening our platform, and we're going to be speaking much more about the many harms that spin off of our failed war on drugs. One in particular related to Ross and his situation is mass incarceration and mandatory minimum sentencing, life without parole sentences. We're going to be doing a lot more work in this area, working with organizations like Family Against Mandatory Minimums.
Good.
Again, the Drug Policy Alliance, great friends of ours. We do great work with them.
Who also submitted an amicus brief.
Absolutely. And just good stuff. And we had some great successes back in last month in November with a few more states coming on board with ending the prohibition of marijuana. Good stuff.
Right, it is. You had said to me once that the war on drugs was necessary to the U.S. economy.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a big question, but I wonder if you could touch on that a bit.
Well, let me say this. I'm going to change that word from necessary to it's advantageous to corporate America right now, obviously, which is a big part of the United States and capitalism and everything. But there's so much money being made off of the war on drugs in its current condition, you know, from private prisons to where you can invest on people being behind bars on Wall Street. How ridiculous is that? Now, we've started to make some changes at the federal level, but at the state level, states are still out there, you know, partnering with these organizations, with these companies, and, you know, agreeing to keep, for instance, 90% of the beds full in these private prisons. That means that they have to lobby for laws like the war on drugs so that we, the police, can keep going out here and arresting people and arresting people and arresting people, you know, filling those beds. You know, in addition to that, things like drug testing has become a $1 billion industry in this country. You know, so all these people who have gone, these millions upon millions of people who have gone through our criminal justice system, and they come out and they're on parole and probation. What do they have to do every, you know, so many days or weeks? They have to go pee in a cup, you know, and this is privatized, you know, and people are making a lot of money behind it. You know, we even are putting people to work in our prisons for corporate America. There is a documentary that I really advise people to see. It's called 13th. That's just it, 13th, 13th. And it is about the 13th Amendment and how, you know, we've ended slavery in this country, apparently, you know, the obvious form of slavery, but that has been replaced by the 13th Amendment, which pretty much says that, you know, we can't have, you know, a private servitude of our citizens. You know, we can't have slavery in this country unless you have been convicted of a crime and incarcerated.
Just a loophole.
That's a handy little caveat.
Yeah, a little handy caveat. Neill, you raised some very, very good points on this. Before we let you get away, Jim had some comments he wanted to mention. Jim, I'm going to turn it over to you for any comments you might have.
Well, I've just been really impressed with LEAP. LEAP has been so important, and I've been following LEAP for years. And Neill has come to Pennsylvania. He's been extremely generous with his time. I see Neill everywhere. I see LEAP everywhere, and I think the message is very effective from his perspective to reach a different group of people than I'm going to be able to reach. You know, the scruffy libertarians, they're easy to ignore. But Neill and his organization brings a voice to this issue that I feel is essential, and I really value that. Thank you, Neill.
Oh, well, thank you. And it's our pleasure. You know, and that's one of the unique things about our organization, LEAP. We're a nonpartisan. So from the left to the right to everything in between, that's our membership, nonpartisan. You know, we have people who hate drugs. We have people who like drugs. We have people who just don't give a crap about drugs who are part of our members. At the end of the day, the policies are failed, counterproductive to public safety. No longer should we be trying to solve, again, a public health crisis with criminal justice solutions. It's time to put an end to the madness. And it's everyone's responsibility, you know, to be up in arms about this and make a change. And again, we are the #1 incarcerator on the globe. And we are supposed to be the beacon of liberty and freedom. It makes no sense.
You're absolutely right, Neill. Well, thank you so much for being with us today.
Neill.
And Neill, how does somebody get in touch with you if they say, hey, I want to find out more about what LEAP is doing and how to reach you?
Yeah, so for LEAP, you can go to our website, which is leap.org. leap.cc, leap.cc. And to get a hold of me, yeah, I'm on social media. And I think I'm pretty much the only Neill Franklin out there with 2 L's. So Facebook, Twitter, Neill Franklin, very easy to find.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. We appreciate you so much being here.